Hey everyone. In this post, I actually want to address a different facet of the whole controversy surrounding the Religious Freedom Restoration Acts passed in recently in states like Indiana and Arkansas. Specifically, I want to address the popular non-governmental reaction to business establishments whose owners have remarked that they would not cater a same-sex wedding, for example. The main example I have in mind is the example of a pizza parlor in Indiana, the town of Walkerton, Indiana, called Memories Pizza. The owners of the pizzeria were asked by TV reporters what they think of Indiana's RFRA, its Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and one of the owners, the wife of the family, it's a family-owned restaurant, the wife of the family, if I'm not mistaken, responded, and I quote, "If a gay couple came in and wanted us to provide pizzas for their wedding, we would have to say no. We are a Christian establishment." End of quote. However, she also stressed that the establishment serves pizza to all comers, regardless of sexual orientation or any other aspect of people's backgrounds. Now, I got that quote from an article written by one of my favorite commentators. He's a writer at theatlantic.com. His name is Connor Friedersdorf, and the title of his article was, "Should Mom and Pops That Forego Gay Weddings Be Destroyed?" I posted that article on Facebook and got an interesting conversation going on the subject with a number of my Facebook friends. A couple of them answered Mr. Friedersdorf's titular question in the affirmative. They said yes, that kind of business should be driven out of business and destroyed if they engage in that kind of discrimination. I actually have to disagree with them in part. Now, I think that refusing service, any kind of service to gay customers, would be the most invidious kind of discrimination possible under the circumstances for that kind of business. I don't think that a business in that context could successfully hide behind the religious convictions of the owners. I think the reason is that you can't really claim that your religion requires you to avoid simply serving pizza to gay people. It's not as if the transaction in that case has anything to do with the customer's sexual orientation, and serving a gay person pizza is not going to encourage a gay person to engage in further acts of homosexuality or what have you. So there's no good justification, even a religious one, for refusing a gay person service. However, when it comes to catering gay weddings, that's a different story, because in that case the establishment is being asked to lend its support to a same-sex wedding, to a ceremony that does have everything to do with the customer's sexual orientation. In that case, there's a much stronger case to be made that, for the business owner to service that kind of event would basically put the owner's seal of approval on the sexual orientation of the customer, in contravention of the business owner's religious beliefs. So I think there's a meaningful distinction between those two categories. And interestingly enough, more of my friends than I expected actually came out and agreed with my take on that subject. Namely that it's more acceptable for religious business owners to refuse to cater a gay wedding, for example, than for them to refuse to serve pizza, for example, to gay customers. But there's a larger aspect of this issue I want to comment on, which is the issue of the attitudes of the business owners. One of my Facebook friends who commented on the aforementioned article said, and actually let me just take a look at exactly what he wrote here. He said, "Just like I would hope that a free market would drive businesses that refuse to serve black patrons out of business, I would hope the market would also drive these equally bigoted businesses out of the marketplace." I actually had to disagree to a degree. If we're talking about businesses that engage in the more invidious kind of discrimination that I just described, for example, refusing to have any kind of business dealings with gay people, such as serving them pizza, in that case, I would be more likely to say yes, that kind of establishment deserves to be run out of business. But if you're talking about a business that is willing, that does that kind of business transaction with gay customers without any discrimination, without any objection, and only objects to being forced to cater a gay wedding or something analogous to that, I'm not so sure. I don't think it's as clear that that kind of establishment deserves to be run out of business. And the reason is that not all opponents of same-sex marriage in particular are simple, mindless, hateful, foaming at the mouth, homophobic bigots. This is a point that others have made, including Mr. Friedersdorf, but a lot of folks in the gay rights movement, a lot of gay allies and so on, and members of the gay community have not accepted this idea. But I think it's a fact, as far as I can tell, that not everyone who opposes same-sex marriage, and in some cases other facets of gay rights, is simply a homophobic bigot. I think part of the reason is that there's a difference between sexual orientation and race, for example, to take the other example that my Facebook friend employed. Race is the kind of personal characteristic that people obviously and self-evidently cannot control. And because people's inability to control that kind of personal trait is one of the factors that make invidious discrimination invidious in the first place. Right? It's obviously wrong to hold something against people that they can't control, that they didn't choose, that they can't change, that they can't control. Skin color is an obvious example of that. Gender is another. Ethnicity more generally is another. But if you're talking about sexual orientation, now I agree that sexual orientation is not a choice and that it's not right to discriminate against people based on that, generally speaking. However, it's more understandable that there are so many people out there who think homosexuality is a choice. And that's because sexual orientation involves conduct as well as status. I think one judge in a past gay rights case that I read about when I was in law school phrased it this way. She said, I forget, he or she said, sexual orientation blurs the line between status and conduct in a way that race and gender don't. And that complicates the picture. The reality is a lot of folks out there are simply misinformed about sexual orientation and the roots of it, and the roots of homosexuality in particular. There are plenty of people out there, devout Christians, devout members of other faith communities, who believe sincerely and in good faith and without any hatred in their hearts that homosexuality is a choice, and a sinful one at that. Now, people who hold that kind of attitude, in my opinion, don't need to be pounded into submission or forcibly, cast out from our midst. I don't think those people need to be banished from polite society and forced to the margins of human civilization, or even merely the margins of the economy. I think people like that need to be educated. I think we need to make a case to folks who harbor those misconceptions and change their minds through persuasion, through facts and logic. Obviously, a lot of them are not going to be persuadable, but I think some of them are. I've seen people's minds changed on this subject. Frankly, mine was one of them. I didn't always hold quote-unquote progressive or libertarian ideas about homosexuality, but as I grew older, from the end of high school until well into college, the older I got, the more people I met, and the more I learned about the whole issue of sexual orientation generally and homosexuality in particular, the more I realized that there's nothing inherently harmful about homosexuality. It's not a choice. There's just no good reason to disadvantage people who belong to that to the gay community. I'm not the only one who's persuadable. A lot of other people are, and I don't think we should react reflexively to any expression of opposition to same-sex marriage or gay rights more generally, with this draconian knee-jerk reaction that seeks to just banish and ostracize these people, ruin their livelihoods, and push them to the margins of society. I think we need to do the painstaking work of distinguishing good faith opponents of same-sex marriage and of gay rights more generally from their genuinely bigoted and hateful counterparts. And we need to appeal to the people in the former category and try and hive them off from the real bigots in the latter category. Not all opponents of same-sex marriage or gay rights more generally simply hate gay people and want to do them dirt. Some of these folks, a lot of these folks, are simply misinformed and misguided. And I think the real solution to the problem that they pose is to guide them in a better direction. But we're not going to do that with these knee-jerk internet campaigns that seek to just ostracize all opponents of same-sex marriage and treat them as if they were lepers escaped from the colony. That, in my view, is the wrong attitude to take. I think we need to, and it's too easy in any case. I mean, as other observers besides me have pointed out, it's not as if folks who join in these, torch and pitchfork mob attacks on Twitter and social media are actually striking a meaningful blow for social justice. You're not actually getting anything done and advancing the cause of gay rights by treating the owners of Memories Pizzeria in this manner, for example. All you're really doing is driving or risking driving people like that even further into the arms of opponents of gay rights and making our job that much harder in the long run. So for that reason and other reasons as well that I don't have time to go into right now, I'm definitely not on board with these reflexive blanket condemnations of all opponents of marriage equality or gay rights more generally. I think the situation is more complex than that, and I think our reactions to the situation need to be more complex accordingly. So that's my 2 cents, and you know the drill. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. Agree or disagree. Peace out.